Hello, everyone, and welcome to Growing Together, a gardening podcast with me, John Lamb, and Don Kinsler, a lifelong gardener and the North Dakota State University Extension horticulturist for Cass County. Don, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm still planting. You can never have too much.
No.
And so I'm still planting. And man, the iris are just in coming into full bloom. The tall bearded iris, the German iris, just in full bloom. And, oh man, I'm just enjoying while I'm planting. I'm enjoying watching what's blooming. How's everything doing in your yard?
It's coming along. That's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about if you need to add a little color into your yard, we're going to talk more about shrubs. But yeah, some of the things that I'm seeing, the irises are really coming along. Boy, the peonies, I would say, are probably maybe a week or two away from really
Yeah, ours
showing.
Are in full bud.
Yeah.
And so, I'm excited.
Yeah, our ferny peony is already passed, so we've seen our first thing that's kind of first thing of the season.
I need to deadhead ours. Yeah, the fern leaf Memorial Day peony. I need to, now that the flowers have faded and they're starting to develop that seed head, I need to deadhead those because we don't need the energy going into that. So that reminds me. Thank you.
Quick question about that. Speaking of that, because ferny peony is one of the first things to kind of die back, when is it safe to transplant that?
Still in September.
Okay, so still wait.
Yeah, so even though they do start going dormant, usually by the end of June or 1st of July, most of the foliage is brown, but don't cut them back until until the tops are fully dried. Sometimes you can plant annual flowers kind of around that too for a little bit of color. But September is still the time to dig, divide, move fern leaf peonies.
Yeah, but it is a great time to start seeing the pops of color in the yard, and whether they're annuals or perennials or like we're going to talk about shrubs, everything's kind of coming in really pretty nice.
Oh, they are. So I always hope for timely rains and good. And it wasn't the easiest winter on things.
No.
Oh, and that reminds me, I got an email from a questioner. Thanks to all of those of you who do send in questions. And so Linda writes in about a problem that she had this winter. And Linda says, in the photo, you'll see rabbit injury on a young apple tree. Do you think that the apple tree is going to survive? Okay, thanks, Linda, for sending in the photo. So the photo shows an apple tree, fairly young, only about 3 inches in diameter. The bark is still smooth. As apple trees age, the bark becomes ridged and things. But this fairly young, smooth, and so, boy, tender eating for a rabbit. It could have been a vole also. And so about the lower 6 inches of bark is all eaten away, exposing the inner white wood. And it looks like it extended over halfway around the circumference. And anytime a tree has the bark stripped away, and the growing layer of the bark of the tree, the cambium layer, is right under that outer bark. So anytime it is stripped away and you see the white wood halfway around that tree, chances of recovery are very slim. And so the tree has not leafed out yet. You could wait and see what happens. Stranger things have happened. But if the injury only extends a third of the way around of trunk, maybe you'll recover. But half, that's iffy. More than half the tree is probably not going to make it. So wait and see a little bit what happens. There's time to replace that tree if it does not leaf out.
Hey, a question about that. If they do have to remove that tree, and we hope that they don't, but if they do have to remove that tree, a lot of times people will take apple wood and they'll soak it and then they'll burn it lightly to give it a little aroma, especially for barbecuing.
Well, that's looking at the upside.
Yeah,
yes.
And I was wondering if a tree is that young, do you know if it will still have that kind of effect, that kind of
I believe it will.
Aroma? Okay.
Yes, I think it would.
So consider that if you have to remove it, consider, maybe you don't have to just throw it away. Maybe you could get a little bit of
I think it's worth trying. I've never tried burning apple wood or adding that to the grill with that young.
Yeah.
But I don't see why not.
You probably still want to dry it a little bit, I guess.
Yeah. I think I probably would split it, dry it, and try it on the grill.
Well, let's talk
what
about...
a way to make lemonade out of lemons.
Try to find some use. As Sam my girlfriend will tell you, that I'm reluctant to really throw anything away. So
That's super.
Trying to find uses for everything.
I love it.
Well, let's talk about some of the things that, like you said, you're still planting. I'm still planting. Maybe you've got some space in your yard, and maybe you want to get something that's going to add you a little bit of color, maybe a little bit of texture. Let's talk about some things that people can still do that with. Because really, when it comes to shrubs, there's no timeline on planting shrubs, right?
Exactly. Because shrubs available at the garden centers can be planted really all summer long. Maybe use a little caution during the hottest days of the middle of summer, but generally the garden centers have wonderful potted shrubs all summer long, and take them out of the pot into your planting hole, water them on a timely basis, and you're good to go. And shrubbery is really the backbone of our landscapes around our houses and our yards. I enjoy mixed flower beds that mix both shrubbery and perennial flowers. So we can combine the two very well. But, shrubbery, it's interesting. When we mention the term shrubbery, sometimes I've had people ask me, well, what exactly is a shrub? Is that the same as like a bush? Are bushes? Yeah. And that's the same. Usually when you see literature, you'll see them referred to as shrubs. But yeah, shrubs, bushes. Generally, a shrub or a bush is something that grows from a multi-trunk, versus a tree that generally has one trunk, maybe two or three. But shrubs are multi-trunk. And of course, they vary in height. Some are low-growing. Some shrubs are deciduous, meaning they have leaves that they lose in the fall of the year. Other shrubs are evergreens, either a pyramidal shape, rounded, low-growing. And so there's such an assortment of shrubbery. And choosing all the different types that you can incorporate into your landscape just makes it pop. So as I've been planting, as I mentioned, I've noticed the shrubs and as the new leaves come out, there is so much intensity in this time of year, and combining the different types. So I thought it'd be interesting today to talk about some of the different types of shrubs that a person would encounter when you go to the garden center. And because maybe you had something that died out that you need to replace, or maybe you just need to add on. And so it'd be fun to talk about some of the different types of shrubs.
Let's just dive in, because like you said, that there is so many different kinds, and so it's a matter of really what do you want and what works for your area.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you shop around at the garden centers, these are some of the ones you'll find. Spireas. Now, spireas, lots of different kinds. The old-fashioned spirea, and they're blooming about now, was the Van Hoot spirea, also called bridal wreath spirea. Those are the ones with the long arching white blossoms. They bloom end of May, first part of June. You see those in a lot of older neighborhoods. Beautiful.
We had one in my house growing up.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Yeah.
And the newer varieties of spirea tend to be the summer blooming spireas. Most of those have pink flowers, some kind of a purplish pink. Some have a lime green leaf or golden leaf. And those are beautiful too. One of the classics is one called Little Princess spirea. It grows in a neat mound. Doesn't mind even if the rabbits eat it off; it'll come back just fine. Lavender blossom, middle of summer. And one of my favorite spireas is one called Tor, T-O-R, Tor birch leaf spirea.
Okay.
And it develops a beautiful coppery color in the fall of the year.
You can get some ones that have really spectacular fall foliage, and they are so nice. Last year, we had a little space. One that I'd always wanted to get was called a candy corn spirea. And if you can imagine the Halloween, the much maligned Halloween candy corn, this leaf actually looks like that. It's multi-tone, kind of an orange, kind of a yellow, a little bit of a green earlier on, but then it changes to that orange and yellow kind of multi-tone.
Good name.
It's such an apt name.
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
so it's really, really great. We got two of them, one of which I think was too close to the downspout. So over the winter, as things melted, I think it got too much water.
Sure.
That one didn't make it. The other one looks like it's doing okay. So I'm looking forward to seeing it in its second and third year now.
Yeah, I love some of the names that these spireas get. Another one that you'll occasionally encounter at garden centers is one called Big Bang spirea.
Yes,
Big Bang spirea. Now that's reported to have the largest pink flowers of any of the spireas. Bright yellow foliage, so it's kind of a good contrast type plant, 3 to 4 feet high. You'll also find that these spireas, so check the tags, they'll vary in height. Yep. Some are a little taller, some a little shorter. So there's a little something for everybody in spirea.
And I can't remember the name of the plant provider, but somebody's got a double play line.
Yes.
I think they do a double play Big Bang, a double play so and so. And I think the idea there is that they remain pretty full. The leaves it's just kind of a good mass of color.
Yes, I've got a double play, but like I said, I can't remember that final, because it's a series.
Yes.
And I can't remember the final part of mine.
Yeah. But no, spireas are great. They're relatively easy to take care of.
They are. And then dogwoods. Of course, for something that's a little shady, semi-shade, or they'll grow in full sun too, dogwoods. Now, check the tag on dogwoods. One thing I love about dogwoods is the red twigs of them. And some of the varieties were selected specially for vibrant red twigs. I've got one called Baton Rouge. Yep. And the height is, probably 5 feet or so. Beautiful, nice green. But man alive, in the wintertime, those have a candy apple red twig to those. Very nice against the snow.
There's also some that have kind of like more of a golden yellow stem. And that also is kind of a nice balance there too to the reds. But yeah, if you have... Sometimes you'll go out to farmsteads or people who have big open areas and they'll have a line of those. And against the snow, those just pop, those big red. And I think I know that there's Baton Rouge is another type of a dogwood, but I think I think red twig is an actual
red twig. Yep, exactly. And there are variegated leaf, the white and green leaf, such as ivory halo dogwood, is a little shorter growing than the typical variegated dogwood.
As we've discovered, with the first year we planted ours out front, the rabbits ate them down, and that was no problem at all. We were very worried.
They bounce back nicely.
They bounce back amazingly well, and they will fill up a space. So if you have space don't plant them in a space that is going to be tight.
Exactly.
Give them room to roam, and you will want to consider it sometime. And you should prune them back every couple of years, right?
You're right, because as time goes on, the branches and the wood will become kind of woody, and the color is more vibrant on the younger growth. So every so often, maybe invite rabbit into your yard to nibble.
Don't invite rabbit.
Don't do that. Bad idea, because they won't specifically go for your dogwood. But anyway, in theory, that would be an idea. But dogwoods every so often should be pruned back to 3 inches, 6 inches above ground level, because they will bounce back from that established root system, and the fresher, younger branches are more vibrant in color. And so rather than letting your dogwood get too old every, 3, 4, 5 years, just take a chainsaw or a heavy pruning shears to it.
And again, because I'm resourceful / cheap and reluctant to throw things away, we've held on to our branches. You shouldn't don't cut your dogwood back. A lot of people use dogwood branches to decorate, like on porches around the holidays.
Yeah.
Don't cut your dogwood back then. Wait until spring, right?
That's the preferred, exactly.
Right. And so we've done that, and then we just store them for a year, store them for 9 months. And then you can bring them out around the holidays and use them as decor, and people really like that.
Yeah, and that's a great idea. So from the dogwoods, then we move on to a few things such as, carragana. Now, on my grandparents' farm, which was homesteaded, I think, around 1915, an old hedge type was carragana. And carragana, you could trim it, but if left untrimmed, carragana could get about 20 feet, 15 feet tall, and wasn't always the bushiest hedge, but then along came globe carragana. Are you familiar with that?
No.
We've got a globe carragana. We've got a hedge hedge of those around our back porch. They will get no taller than about 3 feet and nice and bushy all the way to the base. Beautiful. Globe carigana. If you're looking for kind of a low-growing hedge, garden centers have globe carigana. And they're beautiful. There's also a newer variety, somewhat new, called green spires. Now that will get about 12 feet high, 8 feet wide, but makes a pretty good screen for something. Now, green spires carigana isn't the most common thing, so you'll have to shop around a little for that. But the globe carigana for a low-growing hedge, 3 feet or so, you don't have to trim it, which is nice. You don't have to shear it. And so that's something to look for too in the garden center. And next. Here's one I love for a flowering shrub, another flowering shrub, spireas, of course, too. But potentilla with their beautiful yellow flowers. You can get some apricot and some kind of pinkish tones too. But the potentillas that really shine are the yellow flowered types. And one developed by NDSU was Dakota Sunspot. And it is one of the most vigorous. It doesn't get lanky or woody, but Dakota Sunspot, beautiful green foliage, and the largest yellow flowers, bright yellow, that persist all summer long. It was found in the Badlands of North Dakota.
Really?
Potentilla is native.
Okay.
And they scouted the Badlands area and looked for some that were especially beautiful. And so that's Dakota Sunspot, just rock solid. And it is in the nursery trade, so fairly easy to find. Another good North Dakota native shrub, Medora juniper. That's been around.
Right there in the name, isn't it?
Yes, Medora juniper. That's been around since the 1950s or 60s, but it's a good, solid, pyramidal shaped, little bit, maybe a little bit of a teardrop shape. It's not a real tight columnar type, but it is so rock hardy. The rabbits and deer don't eat junipers like they do arborvitae.
Okay.
Arborvitae being the flat, soft foliaged evergreens. And I'm not going to mention arborvitae. They're beautiful, but very rabbit prone and deer prone. So I love them. I plant them, but we do need to be prepared to protect them or fence them. But Medora juniper, rabbits don't tend to go for them. Very beautiful. It's also resistant to some of the winter burn that happened this year. As long as we're talking about junipers, I love the low-growing, spreading junipers. Now, they vary in height. Some are just flat and hug the ground, like blue rug. Pretty good name, blue rug. That just hugs the ground and spreads outward. There are other types, blue and green shades. In our landscape, we planted the kind of steel blue types right beside the grass green types, and just the contrast between them. The varieties of creeping, spreading juniper that we've chosen are only about 6 inches high or so. They make wonderful kind of almost like a ground cover in between other shrubs. Don't plant them too close because they can develop, they can easily spread from the trunk at which you plant them. They can easily spread out 10 feet.
Oh, yeah.
So, don't crowd them. Give them some space. You can do some trimming on them too. One that's got an interesting name that is also another North Dakota native discovered in the Badlands. That was called Blueberry Delight juniper. It develops little blue berries. Junipers can get little berries on some types. And so anyway, Blueberry Delight. Check that one out.
I'm wondering, because a lot of these you're talking about how they were found or have origins out of the Badlands. Are they a little bit more drought resistant then? Are they good
definitely.
for a drier?
Definitely.
If you have a drier area.
Yep. So junipers, as a rule, and the potentillas, they're used to not having wonderful, wonderful rain because, they're used to growing maybe where the soil isn't real ideal and where the rainfall is intermittent.
All right. We talked about one a little bit, smokebush. Smokebush or something I never even knew of until Sam pointed it out after we bought our house. We don't have one, but somebody about a block away does, and they are amazing.
They are.
There's something that you drive by and you stop and you say, "What is that?"
Yes.
So, Don, what is a smoke bush?
What is a smoke bush? Okay, the way the source of its name is because when they bloom, the flowers, you maybe don't recognize them as flowers, but they're poofs. A botanical name, poof.
Poof.
Yeah,
Yes.
poof. They have poofs or clouds that look like smoke.
Yeah.
They can be kind of a grayish, whitish color, sometimes pinkish. And so, yeah, when you drive by, you'll see this shrub that has these clouds hovering around it that look like smoke. And now the leaf color can be either green or the one that we have is purple leaves. And it's just now, it's got the tight buds and it's going to be smoking fairly soon. And so it produces these clusters that open up. And when they open up, it's these wispy, smoke-like flowers. You know, you don't recognize it as petals and blooms, but these poofs. And so they can tend to freeze back a little. Now, ours froze back a little bit this winter, but that's okay. They come back beautifully from the base, and ours is still going to smoke this year. There was a wonderful one discovered in Otter Tail County, Minnesota, a number of years ago, called cotton candy. It's a green leaf one, and the big poofs of flowers or smoke look like cotton candy, pink. And so that one is a little hard to find in the nursery trade. There is a nursery in Otter Tail County that kind of discovered it that has cotton candy smoke bush. But again, you need to kind of shop for it, get it early in the season. Cotton candy, a wonderful name. So smoke bush.
And smoke bush can get really quite big.
They can. Sometimes you'll refer to them as smoke trees because they can become, halfway shrub, halfway tree. And not like a big shade tree, but they can get fairly good size.
And when they are that big, that's the kind of adds to the effect of this billowing kind of smoky effect.
How tall is the one that you
It's got to be
seen?
Close to 8 to 10 feet.
Oh, sure.
And so driving by, you just kind of stop because you look at that and you say, what the heck is that?
So in a kind of a sheltered somewhat location, they'll get a little taller. Ours is exposed location, so it tends to freeze back, which limits the height. The cotton candy smoke bush that I mentioned, that I believe is listed getting to a possible height of around, 15 to 20 feet.
Wow.
So that one's got some winter hardiness to it, and that's on my wish list to get one of those.
Now, the smoke bush kind of reminds me of something else that you've been a proponent of. We didn't have the space for a smoke bush, but we did get a giant fleece flower.
Oh, yes.
And that is for
the perennial.
And boy, just over the last 2 weeks, that has gone up like gangbusters.
Currently, ours is at head high.
Yes.
And starting to produce flower buds. And of course, they grow from ground level, beginning, whenever things wake up in the spring. So that becomes large shrub-like in no time.
Yeah, that's a good one too. If you have something that within 2 years you want to fill an area, and it's
that is one that people will drive by the street,
yes.
And when that is in full bloom, and wonder what is that shrub, because it looks like a shrub, but it's actually a perennial that grows back from the ground level each year. Yeah, wonderful. I'm glad it's doing well for you.
Yeah, that was a great. Even before we started the show, when I was reading you, that was one that stuck out, and we said we've got to get that. Well, let's take a quick break. When we come back, let's talk about more about some other favorite shrubs.
Get 6 months of local news for just $2. You get unlimited access to the news and information you need to stay connected to your community. Visit inforum.com/subscribe to get 6 months of local news for just $2.
Okay, we're back. This week we're talking about shrubs to add a little bit of color to your yard, a little bit of color, a little bit of texture. We were just talking about some things that get really, really big, like smokebush or giant fleece flower. And one of the things that I've always been kind of curious about,
what's that?
Azaleas.
Yes.
Because you talk about a big. You see some of these pictures of azaleas where they can be. It seems like they're 12, 13 feet tall, and it's like a wall. And then when they bloom, the colors are just amazing.
It's that color early in the spring.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, because generally they bloom kind of before the leaves really start much, so you get that wonderful, vibrant color without a whole lot of foliage getting in the way yet. And luckily, there are some azalea types that were selected as being higher winter hardiness.
Oh,
the University of Minnesota did a lot of work on winter hardy azaleas, and their series is called the Lights series. There's Northern Lights, pink lights, white lights, a number of different colored of lights. So check out the Lights series. So as you go to the garden centers, and I would go to the locally owned garden centers. The national chains have some azaleas that are maybe not the best adapted. So check out the Lights series developed by the University of Minnesota. And also stay tuned. NDSU has a winter hardy azalea that is working its way into the market. I don't have the name offhand, but stay tuned. That one's going to become more on the market as well. So yes, there are azaleas. Now, azaleas, even the winter hardy types, aren't for planting on an exposed hillside somewhere, but for a microclimate. They'd love an established yard. In any yard, and even the new developments, someday you'll have an established yard. You'll have more trees, more wind protection. The snow will filter in and protect things. So, and some of the older neighborhoods already have that microclimate. So, azaleas would love to be in a sheltered location, maybe a little bit they need sunshine, but not hot south sun. They love organic material in the soil, so add lots of peat moss or compost into the soil at planting time and amend it like that. And so azaleas are being grown in this area. You don't see them up and down the streets because, they are for certain areas, but definitely well worth trying. There are people who are successful azalea growers.
Talk about things that are winter hardy and have a little bit of color. One of the things that we planted a couple of years ago was it's called the sand cherry, and it gets these nice kind of
the purple leaf sand cherry?
Nice purpley reddish leaves.
They're beautiful.
And we're very nervous because last year the rabbits got to them for the first time, and it's kind of like the firebush. I think they just really liked it. Maybe it's something in the red color.
Yeah, or they must smell the bark or something, because especially things in that fruit family, like the sand cherry is in that the rose fruit family. They must be able to smell that or something, because they'll go. They don't even have to test everything in a shrub border. They'll go right for that stuff. And you mentioned burning bush, winged euonymus. Yeah. They can pick that out without even having to sample everything. They'll go directly to that. So they must be able to smell it or something.
Yeah. So they did a number on ours, and I brought it in. I brought you a picture. I showed you a picture, and you suggested cut it down to below where they've eaten. And I got to say, it's bouncing back really nicely. So I appreciate that. I was nervous that we were going to have to dig it up. We liked it so much, and it doesn't.
The nice thing, many of those shrubs like that, the deciduous shrubs that have been established they've got that big root system established. So even if something happens to the top, they've got a lot of push power from that root system. So I'm happy to hear it's bouncing back.
Well, let's talk about another big kind of name when it comes to landscaping and shrubs, ninebark. And I'm not sure where you even begin with that, because it seems like this is maybe one of the most prolific shrubs out there. There seems like there are so many kinds of different 9-barks.
Yeah, so the plant breeders have been prolific where 9-barks are concerned, because a while back I did even a garden column on that, and I think I listed at least 30 different named cultivars that are in the nursery trade, and they aren't just repeats of the same thing. They're each uniquely different. So I think in our own yard, I've planted probably 8 different 9-barks, because the foliage and the foliage color is so unique on each of those. For example, one of my favorites is Amber Jubilee. I think that was developed in Canada, Amber Jubilee 9-bark, and it was named after one of Queen Elizabeth's many jubilees. I don't know if it was her 50th jubilee or was her 75th. I'm not sure. But anyway, Amber Jubilee is wonderful. It's got a mixture of color tones, ambers and golds and a little bit of green in there, a little bit of yellow. And it's one of those shrubs that when you drive up, you see this kind of, I'll say flaming, coppery color on it. And so remarkable. Amber Jubilee, you'll find that easily at garden centers. And then a good contrasting one is a very light green, almost a yellowish green. Whenever I say yellowish green, I think of a chlorotic maple,
Right.
where it's not a good, healthy. But the yellowish green 9-barks have a depth of color that has a nice contrast. So kind of a deep lemony color. There's one called Lemon Candy, a wonderful one. Center Glow is another great one. Chameleon, green and burgundy leaves. Chameleon, that's a good name for a 9-bark. A very, very popular one has been the dark burgundy color of 9-bark. One is called Summer Wine. Good description of kind of the dark burgundy colors. And that one will easily get probably 6 feet or so high, wide, quite big. They even developed a miniature version of that called Tiny Wine, and that 3 to 5 feet. So kind of a miniature. Oh gosh, Raspberry Lemonade. I like the names on
these. Are very evocative names.
Exactly. Red Robe, Morning Star, Fire and Brimstone, dark purple foliage. It gets up to 8 feet. Festivus Gold, yellow-green leaves, a shorter shrub. So now, all garden centers aren't going to have 30 different named varieties of these. So, shop around at the different garden centers. Each one will probably have some of these. But the 9-barks, and you'll notice right away, it's not something you have to wait to see what the foliage is going to turn into. It will have that foliage color on the shrub in the pot.
Yep.
It might, as the shrub establishes and ages, it might get even better, but you'll get a pretty good sampling right now as to what that color shade is going to look like in the pot, so you can kind of compare what color shades you would like.
We talked about the colors on the 9-bark, but talk a little bit about the structures of them, both from the branches and then also the leaves, because we were talking about things where you would drive up and you would say, "What is that?" It doesn't take long before you recognize a 9-bark. They have a look to them, right?
They do. The leaves are a little bit, the leaves are lobed, kind of a 3-lobed, almost maple leaf, the typical maple leaf that has kind of lobes, kind of that general shape. And so it's a lobed type leaf. And also over time, and this isn't a drawback, but over time, the branches can get a little larger and a little more woody. The color is more vibrant on the younger type twigs and branches, similar to dogwood. So every 3 to 4 years, just to keep it good and healthy, the oldest wood should be trimmed out. You don't need to totally cut it back. You could, like you would a dogwood to rejuvenate in early spring, just cut it back, let it grow fresh. Or you can selectively remove some of the oldest branches in the spring of the year. And oldest branches, you'll recognize them. They're older, more woody, and it's the newer growth that comes that is the most colorful on it. So it's okay. And most plants require a little bit of input from us. So, a little bit of pruning on those, that's okay. It allows you to kind of work with the shrub, get to know the shrub. And so every so often, do some pruning on it.
And maybe it's just the 9-bark that I'm used to seeing. I live by Concordia. Concordia's got a nice variety of them, but the leaves themselves, they kind of they have a lot of texture in them. Not just that you see kind of the veins coming out like you would like in a maple leaf or something like those. But they really are. They're very textural, right?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, so it's the type of thing that when you look at the 9-bark shrub, there's some substance there. You can see kind of that the leaves have texture and substance to them. So they make a nice contrast with other things in the landscape.
Yeah.
And, many landscapes depend on having contrast in them, both in the shape of the entire shrub, the color of the shrub, the texture. And so 9-barks just fit very well in many, many things. But I did want to mention that, every so often they do need pruning, to keep them best, But again, there are very few plants of any kind, whether it's a houseplant or whatever, that we don't need to do some care for. And so that's all part of it.
Do you know where the name 9-bark came from? Because here are these two things that we know,
Google that.
9 and also bark, and it just seems like there would be an interesting story there.
Yeah, that brings to mind, we mentioned that the branches get a little woodier as they age. The oldest branches, the oldest twigs, do become a little more exfoliating in bark. The bark kind of starts to slough a little bit. I wonder if that's possible, but I don't know where the 9 comes from.
Yeah.
The leaves have kind of the 3 lobes. I don't know, 3 times 3 equal 9. That's a stretch. We need to get to the bottom of that, John.
Well, let's take a quick little break. We'll look that up. When we come back, we'll see what we can tell you. But also, let's talk about maybe even the most popular shrub out there and the most identifiable.
Got to end on a high note with hydrangeas.
If you're loving this podcast, be sure to check out our full lineup. From news and local politics to sports and true crime, find your next great listen right now at inforum.com/podcasts. That's inforum.com/podcasts.
All right, we're back. And while we were away, we looked up what the meaning of 9-bark is, where it comes from. And one of the things we saw was that it's believed that that's the number of that the bark peels back, and it peels back in up to 9 layers.
Yes, because as the branches get older, they do have that exfoliating bark. So, sometime I'll have to peel some of that back on older wood and see if I can count 9.
That kind of reminds me of birch trees a little bit. Can you think of other shrubs that have that kind of effect, that where the stems, and we talked about dogwoods earlier, where the stems are even kind of, the branches are part of the appeal of it?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, we mentioned dogwood. Some of the lilacs have a little bit of appeal to them. And the 9-bark does, except then that older wood is less colorful leaves. And so that's the reason for kind of getting rid of some of that. Any others that come to mind that you have, John,
I can't think
of bark on those?
No.
Yeah. So, anyway, it's a good day because I learned something new. A couple of good things today that I learned. Count the day lost. You don't learn something new. And now I know where the name 9-bark probably originated.
Well, let's talk about hydrangeas. Where does the word hydrangea, what does that mean?
That one I do know. Yeah. We were taught that. Hydra means water. Angia means loving. So hydrangeas are water-loving. And so a good name, oftentimes those botanical names, and that's the species name, the genus name of that group of shrubs. And oftentimes that botanical name gives a clue to either the shape, maybe it's leaf shape, or maybe it's requirements of the plant. For example, anytime a plant has the botanical name alba in it, alba refers to white, like albino, alba.
yeah.
And so oftentimes that gives us a clue. So hydrangea, water loving. And so the entire group that we're going to talk about likes water very much. And oh man, the breeders have been prolific on hydrangeas, so many types. And a common question is, okay, how do we know, because there's hydrangeas all over the place at garden centers, national chain stores, how do we know which are best adapted? Because not all are.
Yeah.
And here's again where the botanical name gives us an important clue. There are two names to kind of remember. Oftentimes on things, you don't need to know what the botanical name of elm is.
Right.
Just buy the elm tree, or even dogwood. Buy the dogwood. Okay, but on hydrangea, there's a clue hidden down in fine print on the tags, and that fine print, which is the genus and species of hydrangea, that immediately tells you which two classes of hydrangea are adapted and which one class is not well adapted. Okay, so I may as well tell those right away. Okay, and then there are cultivars within these groups. Okay, so the two well adapted types. Okay, the genus on all these is hydrangea. Okay, and then these one species adapted is arborescens, hydrangea arborescens. And then will come the cultivar name on the tag, such as Annabelle. So the arborescens types are the Annabelle types with the large, big, round, ball-shaped flowers, well adapted. So hydrangea arborescens.
These are the classic ones that we think of.
Exactly. Yep, love shade, well adapted. And they're the ones that usually die back to about ground level and come from the base, grow beautifully each year. So any of the cultivar names that have that genus species, hydrangea arborescens, any cultivars of that are going to be just fine. Okay. The second group of well-adapted have the genus and species name of hydrangea, again, hydrangea paniculata. Paniculata, the way to remember that is they have panicles or pyramid-shaped flower clusters. And we'll get into the cultivars of these in a minute. So anytime you look at a tag, whether it's a local garden center or national chain, look at the tag, and in fine print, they'll have that botanical name. So any of the cultivars that have hydrangea paniculata, they'll be good. They'll be well adapted. They'll grow well for us here. Okay, now the third type that's very iffy, but they're sold very commonly in our area. Okay, again, the species is hydrangea. The genus, the second part, is macrophylla. Hydrangea macrophylla. That is closely related to the florist type hydrangea that are in pots at the florist. And within that series, hydrangea macrophylla, that are not as well adapted, is the very popular endless summer group. Now, those are the ones sold at garden centers in the bright blue and pink and purple pots. The endless summer group. In that group, there's about 6 of them all in those, and easily identified by those very colorful pots. Okay, and because they're closely related to that florist type hydrangea, they don't do well here. They'll maybe do well for a summer in a very well protected spot. They might do okay, but they're not. You don't see them up and down the streets like you do the hydrangea arborescens and the hydrangea paniculata. So, didn't mean to turn this into a session on botanical names, but it's that important that those learning those simple names immediately tells you if those are adapted. So hydrangea arborescens, yes. Hydrangea paniculata, yes. Hydrangea macrophylla, probably not. But be prepared to to work with those. Give them mulch, give them extra care, and some people have succeeded with those.
One big thing to know about hydrangeas, and does the name tell you which one should be? Some of those grow on old wood, and some of those grow on new wood, right?
Yep, exactly. And so now let's get right into some of these. First, let's talk about the arborescens type, hydrangea arborescens, the Annabelle types with the big round flower clusters. There's a number of cultivars of that. We mentioned Annabelle. There are new varieties. One's called Incredible. Another one's called Invincible Spirit. There are pink and rose shades of those. Again, the big round flower clusters. And there's a brand new one that was developed. It's in the market called Flowerful. And that is the Annabelle type with a little sturdier stem. Have you ever noticed on some of the Annabelle types where the flower clusters just become so big they just bend over and almost snap the branches on which they're blooming? But Flowerful is a sturdier branch, and it's supposed to have a few more flower clusters on it too. So Flowerful. Now, the arborescens type of hydrangeas bloom on what's called new wood. That's the wood that's produced this season. Now, this type of hydrangea normally dies back to near ground level. So in the spring of the year, while it's still dormant, you cut them down to usually around 6 inches or so above ground level, and they burst forth with fresh growth, and it's that fresh growth, new wood, on which they bloom. Now, other types of hydrangeas, such as the well-adapted panicle or paniculata types, they bloom on what's called old wood. They act like what I call a normal shrub. Okay, a normal shrub being they leaf out from the above ground branches. They don't die all the way down. They leaf out from the above ground branches, and that's the wood from which they bloom. So the panicle type bloom from kind of both the new wood and old wood. So they just bloom. You don't have to do a whole lot of anything special. Okay, now that type of the macrophylla type that I said that isn't as well adapted is supposed to bloom on both old and new wood, so it's supposed to be a little more, free form. But for our area, it just doesn't quite do that. It's got that a little bit of a lack of winter hardiness.
Okay.
So again, in a protected spot, I've known some people who have had success. But again, when I say I've known some people, that's not a widespread endorsement.
Right.
Again, you do not see these up and down the streets. That's a good indication. Drive through the neighborhoods and see what's growing. You'll see these other types of hydrangeas without having to look very close. You'd have to look very closely to find these other, this endless summer type. You'd have to search pretty hard to find some that are blooming really, really beautiful. But I know they're out there. But again, those are kind of a special thing. So we discussed the arborescens, the Annabelle type cultivars. Now, in that paniculata group, there's all kinds of good cultivars of that. Oh gosh, one of the most beautiful is vanilla strawberry. Mm-hmm. The pyramidal-shaped clusters, white with kind of strawberry pink tint to it, and the quickfire, little lime, little lamb. Some of them have whitish, some a little bit of green in there. Pink diamond, strawberry sundae. And they all have that same kind of pyramidal cone-shaped flower to them. And also, as they age, it takes a few years for them to kind of develop and get to full steam. But as they age too, they'll become even nicer. The flower color oftentimes changes too. As the season kind of progresses, the flower color will change. And the flower color becomes more intense too if we don't have such hot summers.
Okay.
Because hydrangeas like maybe a little cooler, moist. Make sure you keep the moisture up good. And mulch around any of these hydrangeas. They love a good thick layer, 4 to 5 inches of shredded bark or other mulch. They'll love that as well to keep the soil cooler and more moist.
Let's talk about planting and caring for them. We talked a little bit earlier that Is it for most shrubs too? You want to add a little something in the bottom when you dig the hole, something like peat moss. Is that good for hydrangea too?
It is.
Yeah.
When we talked previously about tree planting in other podcasts, tree planting, we don't usually amend the soil because the tree roots, they've got to go out well beyond, way, way, way beyond the planting hole. So we don't want to make it too inviting for those roots to stay down in that hole by amending the soil too nicely. Perennial flowers keep their roots more confined. They don't spread out so far, so we can amend the soil with organics and things and make it a friendlier root zone. And shrubs are kind of like that too. They'll extend out farther. The root system will extend out farther than perennials, but still we can amend the soil with organic material around a shrub and make it a little more soil friendly for them. And a good example is hydrangeas. They love a nice organic soil, so amend them. So absolutely amend the soil on shrubs like hydrangea, especially things that like it moist. Organic material incorporated into the soil, both in the bottom of the planting hole. By the way, when you add organic matter, compost, peat moss, coconut coir, when you add that to the bottom of a planting hole, it's better not to have just a solid layer of that, but to mix it into the native soil a bit down below. So stir it in a bit. And then when you backfill, also then mix that organic matter into the backfill soil so that you don't have really strict layers as such, but kind of mix the organic material into the soil in which you're going to be backfilling or down below. But that organic matter helps keep the roots cooler. Just by its nature, organic matter is a little cooler. It doesn't bake as hot, and also then mulch up on top after you're all done planting.
And how about water? Because they're called water loving. Would they prefer an area in your yard where it's a little lower and water collects?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Yes. That's a good point, John. Sometimes a lower area of your yard can be hard to locate a shrub. For example, if a lilac is planted in an area that stays a little more moist, doesn't have to be standing water, but if it stays a little more moist, lilacs can die. I planted ours in the wrong spot and the lilacs died. I had to move them to slightly higher ground. And now dogwoods would have loved the moisture. Hydrangeas would love that moist soil. So even if you plant it in an area where water doesn't kind of drain too, but make sure then that you keep the soil more moist than you would other shrubs. It doesn't mean watering every day. But keeping the soil moist so that when you rake away a little of the soil with your fingers to make sure that there's still moisture there. So we would keep hydrangeas more moist than you would many other types of shrubs.
Right. This has been a lot of fun. And then, it's given me, like I said, I've got a small yard, but I've got a couple holes to fill. And now I'm thinking about what I can fill them with some shrubs.
Exactly. And I planted a couple of new hydrangeas, some of the paniculata types, the vanilla strawberry. I didn't have that variety, so I added that. That one's been on the market for a while, but I had to have at least one of those.
We're going to replace one that's an old Annabelle, and it is a flopper because we ended up putting a fence next to it, and so it has to lean towards the sun. So we're going to pull that one out and we're going to put in a new one, but we're going to build it out. We're going to dig it out a little bit more into the yard where it'll get more sun. But I think we're going to try one of the flowerfuls.
That's a good idea. Exactly. And what energizes me is the plant breeders have been so prolific. We are living in good times for plants, and shrubbery is a good example. My gosh, the number of different types of shrubs from which we can choose, just even in the last 10, 15 years. A lot of these cultivars were not available. When I was studying woody plants, boy, students now have a lot tougher time. There was nowhere near the number of cultivars when I was learning woody plants 50 years ago. And so it was a simpler list then now, but I'd rather be doing it right now because, man, the number of things we have to choose from. So this makes me anxious to get back out into the garden center and find something else to buy and plant.
Hey, one thing I wanted to bring up earlier when we were talking about, I think it was when we were talking about 9-barks, how there are so many. And you said to shop around, go to your local garden center and shop around. Another good thing about going to a local garden center is that sometimes you can, if you're looking for a particular kind, you can say, can you order me this? And I think you may have a little bit more harder trouble doing that with a national chain. But with a local garden center where you've got an established relationship, I think they'd be more than happy to help bring in something if they can get it. On their supply list.
Exactly, because even for this year, sometimes they replenish their stock with orders from their wholesalers. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes you might even be able to get it now. Or, patience. If they can't get it this year, well, make a good note of it. And then next year, many of the locally owned nurseries will stock what people are asking for. And so definitely visit with them, develop the relationship that you suggest, John. And good times.
All right. Well, this has been a lot of fun, Don. Thanks for coming by. And if people have questions for you about their shrubs, what's the best way to reach you?
Send me an email, donald.kinsler, Kinzler, @ndsu.edu. And thanks for all of you who do write in. We enjoy hearing from you.
All right. You have a good week.
You as well. Thank you.